India having invested what billions, the dam and whatnot, didn't even have an opportunity to run through that list of investments just by the Indian Treasury into Afghanistan's infrastructure. But I'm sure by now the post-mortem carrying on, who are the winners, who are the losers, and those who are on the other side, the flip side of the scale, the losing side of the scale, wondering what went wrong, noting that what investments went in, what infrastructure was built, as well as human investments that went into the country itself by way of NATO, by way of the United Kingdom, and of course, especially the big gorilla in the room being the United States. Joining us this evening, Professor Dr. Mohammad Reyaz, Assistant Professor of Journalism, Alia University, talking to us live from Kolkata, India. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Reyaz.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. I'm really happy to be back on Radio
Assalamu
Islam.
alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Reyaz. Can you hear me?
Walaikum assalam. I'm really happy to be back on Radio Islam.
You know, Dr. Riaz, we've been listening to news outlets coming from all over the world, and there's of course different takes on, on the situation in Afghanistan. But where it comes, especially from your conventional news media, your CNNs and your CNBC, in your opinion, is there too much focus placed on the US and its allies in Afghanistan as a failed situation and not enough focus upon, Ashraf Ghani, not enough focus upon a failed government, a failed military, and the fact that, the country's got nothing to show by way of, a defense to the arrival of the Taliban? What's your talks? What's your thoughts?
See what happened last Sunday, and after that, the kind of like there is this panic, especially among urban class of Afghans, like the educated middle class Afghans, and especially people who worked in, say, who were really vocal against Taliban, like say people in the media, people working with the civil society, NGOs, especially, and also those who are working with government, especially in defense and security sector. So, and these people, you must have seen the visuals of them trying to flee the country. They taking all kinds of steps at the airport and all. So these visuals have actually captured the imagination of especially media and all these experts and followers of Afghanistan in the West. Okay, because for for more than 2 decades, in fact, this is how West, particularly America and NATO countries, sold the invasion to Afghanistan, that we are here to quote unquote liberate the women, we are here to democratize Afghanistan, we are here to build the nation in this otherwise war ravaged tribal country which is divided on tribal and other ethnic lines. So now these journalists and all are actually asking US that the manner in which you withdrew has actually created this panic, and that is the reason that the focus is primarily on this aspect. And to be fair and to be honest, that's true, because this mess has been created largely because the suddenness and the abrupt nature of although US had given deadlines and time frame, but still they have not been able to put a transition government in place. And so more focus in West rightly has been on this, like on US and the manner of the withdrawal. However, within Afghanistan, what I am noticing is very ardent supporters of president. Like I know many of those people who were campaigning for President Ghani both in 2014 and 2019 presidential elections, like say journalists and entrepreneurs, or some journalists, activists, civil society activists, NGO people, and all those people who were very vehemently campaigning for President Ghani and were like very ardent supporter of Ghani, are abusing him, using all kinds of words for him. So within Afghanistan, especially among these Afghans, they blame President Ghani, and especially some of his President Ghani and his associates, these technocrat Afghans who were educated in Western universities, who lived in West, and then they came here to work as part of his close team, and they are being abused, like literally being abused on social media. That the manner in which he flee the country without having a transition government. So they feel that if this was not done by President Ghani, if they had signed a deal for a transition government, which by the way was on board even till Saturday and Sunday, then people who are trying to flee would not have there would not have been this kind of panic among the people, the common Afghans.
You know, Brother Mohammad Reyaz, look, we understand the US's take on the entire situation. Their media will report in a particular way, the UK as well. But a major player, especially in recent years in Afghanistan, by way of infrastructure development, by way of various acts of, you could call it donations or friendships or whatever the case may be, has in fact been India. You know, with the arrival of Air India flights, with a good flow of traffic between Kabul and Delhi, you know, in particular, cultural exchanges, etc. How is the Indian media viewing this current, you know, situation, especially noting that billions of dollars, and we will call it crores, have been, of rupees, have been invested inside Afghanistan's infrastructure that's now in the hands of the Taliban?
So India had earlier promised $2 billion aid to Afghanistan, which was later extended to 3 billion, because 2 billion is almost over now. So it was later extended, and part of it, as you may rightly mention, include around 400 big and small projects, most of them infrastructure projects, from building school to helping build schools to run hospital, transmission plant. There is this famous Salma Dam in Herat. There are cricket stadiums which are being built. Parliament building, most famous in Kabul, was built by India. So these kind of projects were built. But somehow, when these peace negotiations began, first with the US and then these intra-Afghan dialogues, somehow there was like kind of India couldn't decide whether to, when every other country in the region was started talking to Taliban. India was not like, India never believed in this good Taliban, bad Taliban, and they always thought that this Islamic fundamentalism. I'm talking from the state point of view. So they had their own reservations to talking to Taliban. So there have been reports of some back channel conversations, but they were not really forthcoming in having direct communication with Taliban. And this has in a way put India on the margin, on the back seat when it came to these negotiations. And the way things have unfolded in last few weeks in general, but particularly in last, say, 2 weeks or something, like someone like me, I have been writing about this since 2019, that India is losing in Afghanistan strategically. And we saw this very significantly. Kabul was taken on 15th August, which happens to be our Independence Day. So India, despite those investments, which has built a lot of goodwill among the people, and of course also among the previous government, India does not really have any does not seem to have any direct link with the current dispensation, especially like the Taliban, which may come to power, which is almost sure they will come to power. So here India, at least in the short run, they seem to be losing this kind of, say, at the hands of, I would say, ISI, and Pakistan now have upper hands in Kabul when it comes to strategic interest, and India is at the back foot. But however, I feel that, as you mentioned, because of these infrastructural projects, India has a lot of goodwill among common people, and probably in few years to come, we will have some back to normalcy. But I don't think immediately it will be back to as it was, say, till few months ago.
You know, brother Mohammad Reyaz, we have seen various regimes or governments come and go, you know, over the years. War situations happen all the time. But one of the skills that Taliban seem to have honed and professed very well from Sunday onwards is the ability to communicate with the international way in a calm and in a collective way, ensuring a relative sense of stability in the streets. If you look at Kabul, I mean, things are not 100% back to normal, but relatively back to normal in the sense that people are not complaining to that extent. There will be obviously upheavals as the days go on. It is a transitional nation at the end of the day. But the way that they handled, their press conferences, the way that their representatives in both languages, whether it was in Pashto Dari or in English, communicated with the international press. I mean, as a journalist, what's your thoughts on that?
So I feel personally that ideologically, Taliban remains as strong when it comes to their fundamental beliefs about when it whatever their interpretation of Sharia is, or the way they see the position of women in the society, freedom of expression, etc. And these are not just, although they say it's Sharia, but it's also closely linked to their own Pashtunwali, their own traditional lifestyle mixed with their belief in Islam and their interpretation of Islam. However, as you must be aware that Taliban has for over a decade now a political office in Doha, Qatar, and they have the political leadership which is there in Afghanistan, in Doha, they have learned the tricks, as you rightly mentioned, of how to handle media, how to talk to people. They have learned to bargain and learn diplomacy very smartly. In fact, from China to Iran, they have it's not just that Pakistan is supporting or ISI supports them and so they have good relations with Pakistan. That's the oldest story. They have very good ties with Iranian agencies and Iran. They have senior Taliban leaders have visited all these regional countries like Iran, Uzbekistan, China, Russia. So they have very good relations with these countries. So they have learned to manage media, I would say, and they are packaging, and they need international recognition. And whatever they are doing, what you mentioned in Kabul, is primarily because they know that if once again, like 90s middle class flee the country, it will be very difficult for them to manage. For example, they rely heavily on social media and internet for all these media management stuff. Who will run the internet network? Who will run the communication network if these engineers and all these middle class educated people run away? So they need this kind of support of the middle class, but also of international community of their funds are their treasury bonds are being frozen and all. So they need recognition, and that is why they are doing it. However, on the ground, if you see their words, the words of the political leadership do not always seem to match the actions of the local commanders, especially. So in Kabul, it might seem very normal, and most of the places are normal. But the way they are handling protest, what will happen to all these people who worked in, say, in security agencies? There are these local commanders who may have grudges against, say, local police, and are they not going to revenge? The senior leadership have said that they are giving amnesty and there will be no revenge attack and all. But already there are several reports on social media. I'm saying social media because not all of them are verified, but very credible media like, say, BBC, Deutsche Welle, and others, Guardian, all of them are reporting about it. And not just international media, even Afghan media are reporting, especially Afghan journalists are reporting about it. In fact, just yesterday, there was this report of one Deutsche Welle journalist. Local commanders went to their home, and when he was not there, they killed one of his family members. Now,
Brother Mohammad Reyaz, on that same point, I mean, isn't it to be expected if you have a transitional government anywhere in the world to have this utopian expectation that everybody is going to remain hunky-dory, unarrested, and they are not going to go after those who had issues with the Taliban before? I mean, it would be quite unexpected in reality that wouldn't happen, wouldn't you say, in any part of the world?
That's very good point. I'm glad you interrupted me and pointed this. Yes, you are right. If anywhere in the world, if there have been coup or there is quote unquote a revolution, there would be these kind of targeted killings. Because let's not forget, Taliban also gained a lot of legitimacy among especially rural people because of these kind of attacks by US governments and by like say bombing the whole village, bombing a religious congregation, bombing like by mistake or on this mere suspicion, hundreds of people, thousands of people were arrested. Like one of the things Taliban did was everywhere they went, they released all these prisoners. And you are right, you are absolutely right that there is bound to be these kind of in transition everywhere, anywhere in the world, there would be some revenge attacks, and we can't really control them. But if Taliban really wants, so Afghanistan is a country which has been under civil war for 4 decades now. So if Taliban really wants to change and this cycle of civil war, they will have to be more inclusive, they will have to be more accommodative. If we justify the violence in the name of transition, then what will happen is this cycle of civil war will continue, because there will always be some opposition. And I agree with you, Taliban of 2021 is not exactly same. Taliban has changed a lot. For example, there are these protests happening, and by and large Taliban has so far been tolerating it. And similarly, like say, they have been very open on say women issues and many other issues, and we need to see how they perform. What all I am cautioning is we should not celebrate the statement of leaders just because they are saying it, but we should pressure them that it matches with whatever matches with the actions. And just last
Hold them
point,
to accountable. You mean hold them
yes,
to accountable that you
yes,
said this, and we expect you to respond in that particular way. And if a command on the ground made a mistake, then we expect some transparency.
yes, exactly. And also another thing which I wanted to say is Taliban has shown some positive signs. For example, they have not so far declared the government. They are in talks with all these senior political leadership, like say former President Karzai is there in Kabul, Abdullah is there in Kabul, Hikmatyar is there, and other political leaders. And there are some reports that they have also offered some posts, some ministerial level posts to some of the senior leaders. Okay, so Taliban seems to be more accommodative, because Taliban realizes that if like 90s they become a pariah state once again, and the other countries do not recognize them, especially these powerful Western countries like US and NATO and European Union, all these countries, if they do not recognize them, they will not be able to run the country. So and again there will be civil war. So Taliban, especially political leadership, have shown some maturity, and we hope and expect that they remain true to their words. The only last thing you said about accountability, but the question of accountability comes more when you are a democratic government or a Republican or whatever system. In the talks, whatever we are hearing at the moment is they want a kind of a emirate, and I don't know how common people can make such a government accountable.
Well, it seems to be a regional thing. You've got Iran, you've got Qatar, Doha, Kuwait. All of them are not democracies. All of them are either autocracies or theocracies in some way. So it's just part of the region. I mean, the fact that you've seen democracy in India for 60, 70 years, but then you've got a few hundred years before that of Mughal and non-Mughal rule that seemed to work fine for many people. So I suppose democracy, it's a form of government, but not the only form of government, Brother Mohammad Reyaz.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. In fact, when I was in during the last election, I was in Afghanistan for over a month, and these peace talks were going on at that time also. And one of the formula which many people were talking about is, you will find many articles if you just look for this. It was something like Iranian system, like because the Taliban wanted an emirate, and the the people who are used to this kind of system now would also want some bargain. So many people in fact talked of a system where say these senior Taliban leaders have a kind of a council which they want, but for day-to-day affairs, for the day-to-day management of the affairs, there you have a government, local government, like say Iran, where elections are held, but the supreme leader Imam Khamenei remains very powerful. So that kind of system many people have been talking about. And as you mentioned, that like these countries in in the Gulf countries, where you have monarchy or some combination of monarchy, and in fact even Britain and Japan are also like say constitutional monarchy, not fully democratic countries. So we need to wait and see what kind of system evolves. But yes, we must give Taliban this much credit at least, that they have not immediately announced the government. They are still in talks with all these leaders, and they want to have, probably they want to have more inclusive government. And we should wait and not just judge them. Yes, of course, the one fear people have is because of their past record, okay, and especially what some of these local commanders are doing on the ground. If they can control their local commanders, and if political leadership can take things forward, I guess everyone will be happy. No one ever would support, say, American forces staying in, or a puppet government of, say, America ruling the country forever.
Professor Dr. Mohammad Reyaz, Assistant Professor of Journalism at Ali University. Shukran, Jazakumullah khairan, for joining us on Radio Islam International. Always a pleasure to talk to you, Dr. Mohammed, and inshallah we'll talk again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you so much.
Brother Mohammad Reyaz joining us, talking